The fog did not arrive like weather. It arrived like a decision. Out beyond the last shipping lane where charts turned pale and empty, the sea moved in a slow breath calm enough to fool even careful eyes. Fishing crews in the region carried an old saying shared only in low voices not meant for radios or official reports. They believed the water there sometimes forgot how to be water. On a late autumn morning, a supply vessel called North Star Mercy crossed that quiet stretch with a crew of 9 and a cargo hold filled with ordinary things. Fuel drums. Dry food. Letters wrapped in plastic. Small gifts sent from families waiting on distant islands. Nothing about the voyage was meant to be remembered. At the center of the crew worked a navigation officer whose name almost never traveled beyond the harbor. Ilian Varro. A person known more for silence than stories. Someone who watched the horizon the way others watched clocks. Patient. Careful. Almost afraid of missing something small. Ilian had grown up far from oceans in a dry inland town where wind carried dust instead of salt. Maps became the first quiet escape. Old road atlases found in a thrift store. Folded edges. Faded highways leading toward places that felt larger than breathing. By adulthood, the need to follow lines across empty space had grown into something deeper than curiosity. It felt like survival. Working at sea was never about adventure. It was about order. Coordinates. Angles. Numbers that promised the world could always be measured and understood. For years that promise stayed true. Until the morning the compass hesitated. The change began so slowly that no one else noticed. The vessel moved steady through grey water. Engines humming in a low patient rhythm. Crew members drinking burnt coffee in the galley speaking about nothing important. The kind of calm that makes people believe the day will pass without memory. Inside the navigation room, soft green light from the instruments washed across metal walls. Ilian adjusted a heading by a single degree, a routine motion guided by habit rather than thought. Then the compass needle drifted. Not spinning wildly. Not breaking. Only leaning away from north as if something unseen had begun to pull. Ilian waited for it to settle. It did not. Outside the fog thickened without warning. One moment the horizon existed. The next it disappeared. Sound changed first. Waves softened. Engine noise felt distant, swallowed by something heavy and quiet. Even breathing sounded louder. Ilian called to the captain, voice calm but tight at the edges. The answer came back with casual confidence. Fog happens. Instruments fail. Keep the course steady. But the charts showed open water. No shoals. No islands. Nothing that could explain the strange pressure forming in the air. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time inside fog loses shape. The radar flickered once, then returned to normal. Moments later, a small section of sea ahead vanished from the display, leaving a blank space where information should exist. Not static. Not interference. Only absence. A feeling moved slowly through Ilian's chest. Not exactly fear. Something quieter. The sense of standing near a thought that refuses to become clear. Another crew member entered carrying fresh coffee. Made a light joke about ghosts inside machines. Placed the cup beside the controls. When Ilian looked up to answer, the doorway stood empty. The footsteps had never existed. The coffee remained warm. No one on the vessel remembered bringing it. The fog pressed closer against the windows, dense, now almost solid, like pale fabric wrapped around the ship. Radio static whispered without voices. A thin, restless sound rising and falling like distant breathing. Ilian checked the coordinates again. Numbers stayed correct. Yet the sea outside felt wrong. Too still. Too patient. Then came the first sound from beyond the hull. Not a crash. Not a wave. Something lighter. A slow dragging motion across metal, careful and deliberate, as if something moved beside the vessel trying not to be heard. Crew members searched the deck. They found nothing. No debris. No drifting nets. No birds. Only fog thick enough to hide the sky. When the captain ordered a course correction, the engines answered with a shudder that traveled through every wall. For a moment the vessel felt uncertain of its own direction. Ilian watched the blank place on the radar grow wider. A space where distance refused measurement. From deep memory a childhood image surfaced. A torn page from an old atlas. An island drawn faintly in pencil. No name. No explanation. Only a shape someone had tried to remember. Years ago, Ilian asked a teacher about it. The teacher said maps sometimes hold mistakes that no one bothers to erase. Standing inside the green glow of the navigation room, that answer no longer felt true. Because the sea ahead did not feel like a mistake. It felt like waiting. The dragging sound returned closer, now almost touching the walls of the ship. One crew member whispered that footsteps were moving across the water. Another refused to leave the galley. Someone began speaking a childhood prayer not used in years. The captain tried to keep order with a steady voice and simple commands. But calm becomes fragile when the world stops behaving normally. Then the engines died. No explosion. No smoke. Only silence. A silence so complete it felt heavy enough to bend thought. The vessel drifted. Fog swallowed the last sense of motion. No wind. No waves. No direction. Only stillness. Ilian stepped onto the outer deck despite orders to remain inside. Cold air touched the skin like damp cloth. Visibility stretched no farther than an outstretched hand. And there, barely visible through the pale grey, something dark awaited. A shoreline. Impossible. Uncharted. Close enough to reach without engines. No rocks breaking waves. No trees. No lights. Only a smooth stretch of land rising from water that should have been empty. The kind of place maps refused to hold. Behind Ilian, the crew gathered in silence. 9 figures staring toward a coast that had no right to exist. No one spoke the question forming in every mind. Because speaking it might make the moment real. After a long, still minute, the radio crackled once. A single burst of sound cutting through the fog. Not static. Not a voice. Breathing. Slow. Patient. Listening. Then silence again. The shoreline remained unmoving, waiting as if it had been there long before ships or charts or names. Inside Ilian, something steady began to fracture. Numbers could not explain this. Coordinates could not protect against it. For the first time in years, direction meant nothing. Somewhere beyond the fog-covered beach, something unseen seemed to notice the drifting vessel. Not with anger. Not with welcome. With recognition. As if the sea itself had been expecting them. The captain finally spoke in a voice lower than anyone had heard before. No panic. Only quiet disbelief. There is no island here. No one answered. Because the truth standing before them felt simple and impossible at the same time. The island was real. And the maps were wrong. Fog tightened around the ship like a closing door, cutting away the open sea behind them, leaving only the silent shore ahead. A question rose slowly inside Ilian, heavier than fear. If this place had never appeared on any map, who had been guarding it? And why did the water seem determined to bring them here? The vessel drifted closer, without engines, without wind, guided by something gentle yet unstoppable. Toward a beach where no footprints waited. Toward land untouched by time. Toward an answer no sailor had ever returned to describe. As the hull brushed softly against hidden sand beneath the fog, one final thought settled deep within Ilian's mind. Some places are not lost. Some places are hidden. And some places wait for someone who does not yet understand why they were chosen. The question was no longer whether the crew would reach the shore. The question was what might already be standing there inside the mist. Watching. Listening. Remembering. What happens when the sea delivers you to a place the world was never meant to find? For a long moment no one moved. The ship rested against unseen sand as gently as a breath settling into silence. Fog wrapped the hull so completely that sea and sky disappeared, leaving only a small circle of grey around the vessel. Ilian listened for something familiar. Wind against metal. Water against wood. The distant call of another engine. Nothing came. Silence at sea is never natural. Even calm water whispers. Even empty horizons carry motion. But here the world felt paused, as if time itself waited for permission to continue. Behind Ilian, the crew stood close together without speaking. People who had crossed storms and long winters, now unsure of a quiet shore. The captain finally gave an order, soft but steady. Prepare to step onto land. Check supplies. Stay together. Routine words spoken to hold fear in place. No one argued, because drifting back into the fog felt more frightening than the unknown beach ahead. A narrow ladder lowered from the side of the vessel. Its metal rungs touched sand with a sound too soft to trust. One by one the crew descended. When Ilian's boots pressed into the shore, the first sensation was warmth. Not heat from sun. Not cold from sea. Something balanced between. Like ground that had forgotten weather. The sand looked pale grey, almost silver under the fog. Smooth without stones. Unmarked without shells. No footprints. Not even from birds. It felt less like a beach and more like a surface waiting to be written on. Ilian turned slowly, studying the outline of land. The shoreline curved inward, forming a quiet bay. Beyond it, the fog thickened into a wall, hiding whatever waited farther inland. No trees visible. No cliffs. No sound of insects or wind. Just stillness. One crew member whispered that the place looked unfinished, as if the world had stopped building it halfway through. Another laughed too quickly, the sound breaking apart in the air. No echo returned. The captain marked the position on a handheld device. Numbers appeared normal. Latitude. Longitude. All correct. Yet the map beneath the coordinates remained empty water. Proof and impossibility living in the same screen. They carried emergency packs onto the sand. Food. Flashlights. Signal flares. Ordinary tools meant for ordinary danger. Ilian kept glancing back at the ship half hidden in fog. The North Star Mercy looked smaller already. Less like protection. More like something left behind. A strange thought formed quietly. What if the vessel could not leave even if the engines returned? What if the sea outside this bay no longer connected to the world they knew? The idea felt unreasonable. But nothing here followed reason. The captain asked for a short survey of the shoreline. 2 people would walk east. 2 west. Never out of sight. Ilian remained near the center, marking details in a small waterproof notebook. Habits stronger than fear. Time passed without measure. The fog did not thin. The light did not change. It could have been morning. Or evening. Or a moment outside both. Footsteps in the sand made the only sound. Soft and careful, as if loud movement might wake something sleeping beneath the ground. When the pairs returned, their reports sounded identical. Nothing found. No plants. No debris. No sign of life. Even the tide seemed absent. Water line unmoving. Waves frozen in gentle curves that never reached higher or lower. The bay felt separated from the rhythm of the ocean. One crew member pointed toward the fog inland. For a second a darker shape seemed to shift there. Tall. Narrow. Gone before anyone could confirm. Eyes play tricks in low visibility. Everyone knew that. Still no one looked away from that direction for several breaths. The captain decided they would remain only long enough to repair the engines. Then leave. A simple plan. Comforting in its clarity. But plans depend on time. And time here felt uncertain. While engineers returned to the vessel, Ilian stayed on shore watching the blank horizon. The notebook rested open, but no new details came. Instead, memories surfaced uninvited. Childhood evenings tracing roads across paper. Imagining places untouched by noise. Wondering what silence might feel like if it had a location. Back then, hidden places sounded peaceful. Beautiful even. Standing here now, the same silence felt heavier. Not peaceful. Not hostile. Just aware. As if the land itself listened. A faint vibration touched the ground beneath Ilian's boots. So soft it could have been imagination. Then it faded. No one else reacted. Minutes later it returned slightly stronger. A slow pulse traveling through sand like a distant heartbeat. This time another crew member noticed. They looked at each other without speaking. The vibration stopped again, leaving doubt behind. From the ship came the muted clang of tools. Voices low and practical. Proof that normal work still existed somewhere nearby. Ilian felt relief at the sound. Human noise pushing back against the strange quiet. But the relief did not last. Because from deeper inside the fog inland a new sound emerged. Not mechanical. Not natural. Something like breath moving through a hollow space. Long. Slow. Almost thoughtful. It lasted only a few seconds. Then disappeared. Every person on the shore heard it. No one tried to explain. The captain ordered everyone back toward the vessel until repairs finished. No wandering. No risks. They obeyed quickly. Fear at sea usually comes from storms or darkness. Things with clear danger. This felt different. Fear without shape. Without direction. Hours seemed to pass though watches showed little change. Engineers reported confusion. Systems not broken. Fuel lines clear. Power present. Yet nothing responded. It was as if the machinery had forgotten its purpose. While they worked, Ilian noticed something along the sand near the water. A faint line stretching parallel to the shore. Not a footprint. Not a crack. More like a shallow groove pressed gently into the surface. It continued for several yards before fading. Kneeling beside it, Ilian felt the same faint vibration again. Stronger now. Rhythmic. The groove deepened slightly with each pulse. As though something beneath the sand moved slowly toward the bay. A voice from the ship called Ilian back. Repairs still failing. Night possibly approaching, though the sky showed no change. When Ilian looked once more at the groove, it had already softened. Edges smoothing. Almost gone. Like the land preferred not to reveal movement. Back aboard, the vessel tension grew quiet and sharp. People spoke less. Listened more. The radio remained silent except for occasional bursts of that soft breathing static. Always brief. Always stopping the moment someone tried to answer. Food tasted dull. Water felt thicker. Even light inside the cabin seemed dimmer. Ilian studied the blank radar again. The empty space ahead had widened to surround the entire bay. No open sea visible in any direction. Only a circle of nothing. A realization formed slowly. Not sudden. Not dramatic. If the radar showed truth, then the world outside this place might no longer exist in any reachable way. The thought settled like cold weight in the stomach. Near what should have been evening, the engines finally stirred. A weak trembling running through the hull. Hope rose quickly, fragile and bright. Then the trembling stopped. Silence returned deeper than before. One engineer whispered that the systems behaved as if something held them still. Not broken. Not drained. Held. No one asked what could hold an engine without touching it. Because no answer would help. The captain faced the crew, voice steady but softer than before. We rest. We try again soon. We stay together. Simple words meant to keep order alive. People nodded, though belief felt thinner now. Ilian stepped back onto the deck, looking toward the hidden shore. The fog inland seemed closer than before. Or maybe the ship had drifted deeper into the bay without anyone noticing. Distance here could not be trusted. Somewhere inside that grey silence, the low breathing sound returned. Longer this time. Almost forming rhythm with the faint pulses under the sand. Ilian felt certainty grow without evidence. A quiet knowing impossible to explain. This island was not empty. It was patient. And whatever waited beyond the fog had begun to move closer. The journey had only started. Night never truly arrived, yet something darker settled over the bay. Light dimmed without source, as if the sky itself had stepped farther away. Inside the North Star Mercy, the air felt close and used. Every breath shared. Every sound too loud in the silence between words. Ilian sat near the navigation console, staring at instruments that still functioned but no longer meant safety. Numbers remained steady. Coordinates unchanged. Yet meaning had slipped away from them. Across the room, a crew member quietly counted supplies again and again. Not because food was low. Because counting felt like control. Another person whispered memories of home into folded hands. A habit learned in storms when survival depended on hope sounding real. The captain stayed standing longer than necessary. Watching everyone. Carrying calm like something heavy that could not be set down. Time passed without edges. Then the vibration returned. Stronger now. Clear enough that cups trembled against metal surfaces. A slow pulse rising from beneath the hull, traveling through walls and bone. Someone asked if the tide had changed, but the water outside remained perfectly still, flat as dark glass. The pulse came again, closer together this time. Not random, rhythmic, like a heartbeat learning how to be heard. Ilian felt the sound more than heard it, a pressure behind the ribs answering each distant thud. Body recognizing a pattern the mind refused to accept. No machinery could cause this. No natural motion matched its patience. The captain ordered everyone onto the deck. Cold grey air met them without wind. Fog thinner than before, yet still hiding the far shore. The sand where they had walked earlier looked different. Not disturbed. Not broken. Smoothed. As if careful hands had erased every footprint during the hours they remained inside. A quiet fear moved through the group, because erasing footprints meant something had touched the ground, and none of them had seen it. Near the center of the bay, the shallow groove Ilian noticed before had returned. Wider now, curving slowly toward the water. Each pulse beneath the earth deepened it slightly, grain by grain. Movement too slow to watch yet impossible to deny. One crew member whispered that something underneath was breathing. Another told them to stop talking. But silence could not stop the rhythm. The captain made a decision shaped by equal parts courage and desperation. They would follow the groove inland. Find its source. End the not knowing. Staying beside the ship no longer felt safe, because whatever moved below the sand was already here. Reluctant agreement passed through the crew. Fear shared becomes direction. They gathered flashlights, though the dim light had not fully faded. The beams looked weak in the fog, swallowed after only a few steps. Ilian walked near the front beside the captain. Notebook still in hand, though writing had become impossible. Some experiences refused to become words. The ground felt firmer farther from the shore. Less like sand. More like smooth-packed earth without stones or roots. Still no plants. No insects. No scent of life. Only that steady pulse guiding them forward. With each step the air grew warmer. Not comforting warmth. Something older. Still. The breathing sound returned faint at first. Then clearer. It did not come from above or ahead. It seemed to rise through the ground itself, as though the island inhaled beneath their feet. Someone began to cry softly without meaning to. No one tried to stop them, because the sound matched what everyone felt but could not release. After a long slow walk, shapes finally formed inside the thinning fog. Tall narrow structures rising from the earth in uneven circles. Not trees. Not stone pillars. Something between. Their surfaces looked smooth yet folded, like material shaped by pressure rather than weather. No marks of tools. No cracks of age. They stood silent and patient, as if grown instead of built. The crew stopped at the edge of the circle, unwilling to step closer. Instinct older than language warning them to remain still. The pulse beneath the ground grew stronger here. Almost loud. Each beat followed by that long hollow breath. Ilian felt dizziness for a moment. Not sickness. Recognition. A memory surfaced without permission. The pencil-drawn island from childhood. The faint curved lines around it, once mistaken for waves, now understood as something else. Rings. The same pattern formed by these silent structures, meaning the drawing had never been imagination. Someone had seen this place before. The realization felt heavier than fear, because if others had found it, why had no one returned to speak of it? The captain stepped forward one careful pace, then another. Nothing moved. Nothing attacked. Only the breathing continued deep and slow. Encouraged by stillness, the crew followed, forming a loose circle inside the structures. At the center lay a shallow depression in the earth, perfectly smooth. No sand. No dust. Just dark surface faintly reflecting the dim light above. The pulse came from beneath this hollow. Clear now. Undeniable. Heartbeat of something vast and buried. A terrible understanding formed quietly among them. The island was not land covering stone. It was land covering something alive. No one spoke the thought, because speaking might wake it fully. Ilian felt drawn closer to the center without deciding to move. Each step lighter, as if gravity weakened near the hollow. The breathing slowed. Waiting. A sudden memory from years at sea returned. Stories told by older sailors late at night. Stories about places water avoided. Places that listened. Back then Ilian believed silence meant emptiness. Now silence felt like attention. Standing at the edge of the hollow, Ilian looked down into darkness that showed no bottom. Only faint shifting shadows far below. Slow. Immense. The pulse stopped. Complete stillness followed. For one endless second the entire world held breath. Then something moved beneath the surface. Not rising. Not striking. Turning. As if becoming aware of being watched. A low vibration passed through every structure around them. Through ground. Through bone. Through memory itself. One crew member collapsed to their knees, hands over ears, though no sound existed. Another backed away shaking. The captain tried to speak, but voice failed. Because language belongs to ordinary moments. And this was not ordinary. From the darkness below the hollow came a single exhale. Deep. Ancient. Patient beyond measure. The fog around the circle began to draw inward slowly. Spiraling almost gently. Closing the distance between island and crew. Ilian understood something then with terrible clarity. This place had never been hidden to protect itself from the world. It had been hidden to protect the world from waking it. And now, after years or centuries of silence, it was no longer asleep. The near resolution they hoped for. A simple explanation. A broken machine. An illusion of fog. All of it vanished, leaving only one truth rising quietly beneath their feet. They had not discovered the island. The island had been waiting for someone to arrive. And whatever lived below had finally opened its awareness. The pulse returned. Louder than before. Not the heartbeat of something dying, but of something beginning. The pulse did not stay steady. It changed. Slow at first, then widening between beats like something learning the shape of time again. Each vibration rolled through the hollow and climbed the silent structures surrounding the crew. Through the ground. Through their bodies. Through thoughts they could no longer keep separate from a sound. No one tried to run. Instinct usually screams for escape when danger appears. But this felt different. Not a threat chasing them. A presence unfolding around them. Too vast to outrun. Too calm to fight. Ilian stood at the edge of the dark hollow, unable to look away. The surface below no longer seemed like earth or stone. It moved with depth that suggested distance far greater than the size of the island. Like staring into water that reflected nothing. Another breath rose from below. Longer now. Almost shaped into sound. Not language. Not voice. Recognition. The feeling touched memory rather than ears. Images without pictures. Weight without form. Ilian saw fragments of ocean stretching across centuries. Storms forming and fading. Ships crossing and vanishing. Stars turning slowly above water that never truly changed. All of it watched from below. Patient. Unmoving. The realization arrived quietly. This presence had always been here. Beneath roots. Beneath maps. Beneath history itself. Not sleeping in the way living creatures sleep. Waiting in the way mountains wait. Certain that time would eventually bring something back to its shore. A crew member cried out as the ground warmed suddenly beneath their hands. Not burning. Just alive with slow circulating heat. The captain forced words through a tightening chest. Everyone stepped back. Slowly. Some obeyed. Others remained frozen between fear and awe. Because stepping away felt meaningless. Distance meant nothing besides something this immense. The fog above the circle began to lift for the first time. Not clearing outward. Pulling upward as if drawn by an unseen tide. Dim light filtered through, revealing more of the structures. Their smooth surfaces carried faint patterns now visible. Curving lines spreading outward from the hollow like ripples held in stone. Not decoration. Memory. Records of pulses repeating across ages too long to count. Ilian understood without knowing how. Each line marked an awakening. Rare. Distant from the last. And the final line ended unfinished. Waiting. The pulse beneath the hollow matched the pattern exactly. This moment had happened before, but not often. Not in any human lifetime remembered. A terrible gentle truth formed. The island did not harm sailors. It called them. Only when the long waiting reached its end. Not for food. Not for anger. For witness. The presence below needed something simple and fragile. To be seen. To be known. So its waiting would not remain endless silence. Tears blurred Ilian's vision without warning. Not from fear. From the unbearable weight of loneliness rising from the hollow. Loneliness older than language. Older than land. The breathing slowed again. Shallow now. Uncertain. As if the awakening required more strength than remained. A sudden cracking sound spread across the dark surface. Thin lines of faint light opening like distant lightning beneath deep water. The ground trembled harder. Structures around them humming with low resonance. One crew member screamed that the island was breaking apart. Another dropped to the earth praying. But Ilian felt something different. Not destruction. Struggle. Like something vast trying to rise after ages of stillness. Finding the effort too great. The pulse skipped once. Twice. Weakening. A quiet understanding settled into Ilian's chest with painful clarity. This awakening was not the beginning of something rising. It was the end of something fading. The presence had waited across centuries for a moment of witness. And now with witnesses finally here, its strength was leaving. The unfinished line in the stone would never close. Because this was the last pulse. The last breath. Grief moved through Ilian deeper than any personal memory. Grief for something never known yet suddenly impossible to lose. Without thinking, Ilian stepped forward into the shallow hollow. Boots touching the dark surface that felt warm and smooth like still water holding shape. Voices shouted behind. Hands reached to pull back. But the moment felt fragile as glass. And retreat felt like betrayal. Kneeling slowly, Ilian placed a hand against the glowing fracture of light. Heat spread gently across the skin. Not burning. Welcoming. Images flooded again stronger than before. Endless quiet beneath oceans. Centuries measured only by tides above. Waiting without certainty that anyone would ever come. Not a guardian. Not a monster. Only a memory of the world before noise. Before movement. Before time divided into past and future. A keeper of stillness. And now stillness was ending. The pulse beneath Ilian's hand faltered once more. Fainter than breath. Ilian whispered without planning the words. You are not alone. The sound felt small against the vast hollow. Yet the vibration beneath the hand answered. Soft. Grateful. The light within the fracture spread outward in slow calm waves. Climbing the hollow. Touching the surrounding stone lines. Completing the unfinished pattern. Not with strength, but with acknowledgement. The final pulse arrived. Gentle as falling snow. Then silence. True silence. Deeper than before. Empty of waiting. The warmth faded from the ground. Light dimmed. Cracks sealed into smooth darkness once more. Around the circle the tall structures lost their faint glow. Returning to still grey shapes without memory lines. Above them the fog drifted back down slowly. Not trapping. Only covering. Like water closing over something laid to rest. No vibration remained beneath the earth. No breath. No awareness. Only quiet land beneath quiet sky. Ilian stayed kneeling long after the others stopped speaking. Hand resting on cooling darkness. Feeling the absence where presence had been. The captain approached carefully, voice softer than any command. We have to go. Not urgency. Respect. Because even leaving felt like stepping out of sacred silence. One by one the crew walked back toward the unseen shore. No one looked behind. Not from fear. From understanding. Some moments should remain undisturbed. When Ilian finally stood, the ground felt ordinary beneath their boots. Just earth. Just sand. As if nothing had ever lived below. Yet inside remained the echo of that final grateful pulse. Quiet. Endless. They returned to the vessel without speaking. fog guiding them gently back. Behind them, the circle of stone faded from sight, hidden once more from maps and memory. By the time the ladder touched the deck, even the path of footprints had vanished. The island had already begun forgetting them, or perhaps forgiving them. Engines started on the first attempt. Smooth, certain, as if nothing had ever been wrong. No one celebrated, because survival felt different now. Heavier, sacred. The ship turned slowly toward open water, fog thinning with each careful mile. Soon waves returned. Wind followed. Stars appeared faint and distant above. Ordinary world rebuilding itself around them. Yet something essential had changed. Inside Ilion, inside every silent crew member watching the horizon, they had come seeking direction, and found an ending older than any journey. As dawn finally touched the sea behind them, soft gold spreading across restless water, only one question remained in Ilion's quiet thoughts. Not what had lived beneath the island, but how many other silences in the world were still waiting. Unseen, unremembered. Morning did not feel like morning. Light returned to the sea in soft color, yet nothing inside the crew felt new or clean. Dawn usually brings relief after danger, a quiet promise that night has ended and survival has meaning. But this dawn carried weight, a silence that followed them away from the hidden shore. The North Star Mercy moved through gentle waves as if guided by memory rather than navigation. No alarms sounded. No instruments failed. Everything worked with calm obedience. Too calm. Ilion remained near the rail, watching the water stretch outward in endless motion. Real ocean. Living ocean. Wind touching the surface in small restless patterns. Proof that the ordinary world still existed. Yet the feeling inside would not return to ordinary. Behind the eyes lingered the final pulse. That soft, grateful ending that had not asked for rescue. Only witness. Other crew members moved slowly across the deck, speaking when needed, falling quiet again without discomfort. Something shared had changed the way sound lived between them. No one argued. No one laughed loudly. Even footsteps felt careful. Grief does not always come from losing a person. Sometimes it comes from touching something vast that disappears the moment it is understood. By midday, the fog had fully dissolved. Sky opened wide and blue above the rolling sea. Gulls appeared circling at a distance. Normal life continuing without knowledge of what had ended beneath the hidden island. The captain finally called everyone together near the center of the deck. Voice steady. Professional. Almost unchanged. They would report mechanical failure. Temporary loss of navigation. Unexpected drift. Nothing more. No island. No hollow. No pulse beneath the earth. Because some truths cannot live inside official language. And perhaps should not. No one disagreed. Not from fear of disbelief. From quiet agreement that the moment belonged to silence. Logs were written. Coordinates recorded as empty sea. Time marked as routine delay. Ink forming a story small enough for the world to accept. Only Ilion hesitated before closing the notebook. On one hidden page a single line was added. No location. No explanation. Just words small enough to carry memory without exposing it. Witness was given. Waiting is over. The notebook closed softly. Days passed as the vessel returned toward familiar routes. Harbors grew closer. Radio traffic louder. Human life filling the spaces where silence once lived. With each mile the hidden island felt more distant. Almost dreamlike. Yet not fading. Because dreams blur. This memory remained sharp. Quiet. Permanent. At night Ilion stood alone on deck watching stars scatter across dark water. Trying to understand why the moment had chosen them. Why that final breath had waited for their arrival instead of another ship years earlier. Or centuries later. No answer came. Only the slow understanding that meaning does not always explain itself. Sometimes presence is enough. When land finally appeared on the horizon, the crew felt relief mixed with something harder to name. Returning meant safety. Warm food. Voices that had never heard the deep breathing of the earth. Returning also meant leaving the silence behind forever. Dock lines were secured. Engines powered down. Harbor sounds rushed in loud and bright. Life continued without pause. Officials asked routine questions. Forms were signed. Repairs scheduled. No one looked closely enough to notice how carefully the crew avoided certain words. Within hours they became ordinary sailors again. Faces in a crowd. Stories reduced to weather and distance. Yet inside each of them something remained open. A quiet space shaped like the hollow beneath the island. Days turned into weeks. Sleep returned slowly. Dreams sometimes carried the low distant pulse. Not frightening. Only gentle. Like memory breathing in another room. Ilian found it difficult to look at maps the same way. Lines once trusted now felt incomplete. Too certain. Too confident that the world could be measured. Because somewhere beyond printed edges lay a place that had never needed to be found. Only remembered at the right moment. Work continued. Voyages resumed. Seasons shifted. Life does what it always does. It moves forward. Yet certain mornings when fog rested low over calm water, Ilian felt the same quiet awareness from that final breath. Not calling. Not waiting. Simply gone. And the absence carried its own kind of peace. Years later, the North Star Mercy sailed new routes with new crew members who never heard the story. The hidden notebook page remained unread, tucked between ordinary entries of fuel counts and weather notes. The world kept spinning. Storms rising. Cities glowing at night. Millions of lives crossing oceans without knowing what once rested beneath a silent shore. Nothing in history recorded the ending of that ancient waiting. No monument marked the place. No name entered language. Yet meaning does not require witnesses beyond the moment itself. One evening long after the voyage, Ilian stood again beside open water. Not working. Just listening. Waves moved with endless patient rhythm. Wind carried the scent of distance. Stars reflected in broken lines across the surface. The ocean looked the same as it always had. Vast. Restless. Alive. But now Ilian understood something hidden beneath that motion. Even in a world filled with noise and speed, there are silences deeper than time, waiting not to be discovered, only to be seen once before they fade. And maybe that is enough, because not every mystery is meant to remain forever. Some exist only to remind us that being present, even briefly, can give meaning to something older than memory. The final pulse beneath the island had ended, but the witness continued, carried quietly inside a single human life moving forward through ordinary days. No map would ever show where it happened. Yet the truth remained simple and certain. Somewhere in the endless history of the sea, a lonely silence was finally seen. And in that small fragile moment between breath and stillness, it was no longer alone. The water kept moving. The sky kept turning. Life kept beginning and ending in countless unseen places, but far beyond charts and names, resting beneath memory instead of land. Peace remained. Not loud. Not shining. Just quiet. Like the calm after a heartbeat fades, leaving only the gentle understanding that nothing waits forever. And sometimes, the greatest journey is not discovering what is hidden, but arriving in time to say goodbye